Good morning, everybody, in this wonderful world of ours. The sun is shining, the sky is blue, and you are all very welcome to this In the Spotlight with me, your host, Seamus Corrie, wellbeing consultant, chief wellbeing officer, mental health trained practitioner, podcaster, and best-selling co-author. It's so nice to have you along to listen to this episode today. And listen, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you who have subscribed and who have followed both on my Spotify and my YouTube channel. And I really am appreciative of your continued support in terms of this series. What I try to do is bring the best to you in terms of what's out there. Inspiring you, challenging you, maybe helping you maybe to rethink your thoughts in terms of how you're living your life at the moment, but also giving you tools and tips and tricks to live better, live well, live according to your own mission and vision and value and purpose. And I tell you, I've had some great guests on, with great guests still to come, and you won't want to miss out on today's episode, because I have an amazing human being. Oh my God, you just don't want to miss this episode. And if you've not already followed and subscribed, do so today, both on Spotify, In the Spotlight, and YouTube, In the Spotlight. Make sure you click that link and subscribe, because you do not want to miss out this amazing gold nugget of wisdom that I have coming to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you might be, I have a wonderful guest for you today. She is a mum, a founder. She is a founder of an organisation called Mojo Motivator. She is inspiring women, the length and breadth of this wonderful country of ours, to be their very best selves, to inspire them in terms of confidence, to increase their passion, to increase their motivation, just to support them in every which way she can. She is also a former theatrical person, and we will get into that in a little bit of detail as well. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you might be today, I have the one, the only Fran Willoughby in my podcast series this morning. Fran, you're very welcome to In the Spotlight. How are you?
Hi, God, what an introduction. That was incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very, very welcome, Fran, and it's an honour, it's a privilege to have you. And listen, I want to do a big shout out first of all, because I know we met nearly a couple of months ago now, in a wonderful link up in a wonderful online network called the Founders Network, run by the amazing Rudy and Albert. And guys, I big you up. I send you high fives today in terms of connecting both Fran and I together. And it was through those initial connections, Fran, that we got to know one another. And I've had the privilege and pleasure and awesome humility to be with you on your journey, and you as an inspiring podcaster yourself, and you've just launched your new series, which is absolutely wonderful, and you can tell us a little bit about that. But for those who may not know you, Fran Willoughby, for those who are getting to know you the first time to listen to this episode today, who are you, Fran? Share with the world who you are.
Who am I? Well, my name is Fran. I am I wear many hats. I'm a multi-hat wearer. But my main passion and purpose right now is my coaching. I'm a resilience and confidence coach for self-employed women. My background is that as you mentioned already, I was professionally trained in musical theatre. So that has set me in good stead to share my resilience journey with people. I've basically been resilient since I was 4 years old. As you can imagine, dancing and singing and putting myself out there and dancing in festivals and auditioning for things. So you learn in that arena to be incredibly resilient from a very early age. And it's no bad thing. Those skills have set me in good stead. They're incredibly transferable. And it meant that as I got older and grew up, I mean, Some might say I haven't, but I'm trying. We're all trying all the time to grow up, right? Once I left musical theatre and I had a family, I had to reinvent myself and set up a new business. And I've done that several times over the years as I've needed to do. And I firmly believe that a lot of my confidence and ability to do that is thanks to the training that I had in the theatre. It's a kind of resilience that you can't teach. I think it's something that is built up over years and years of experience and knockbacks and successes and having to reinvent yourself, so that's kind of my passion, is this coaching business that I've got now called Mojo Motivator. The mojo part of it, I believe, is that secret ingredient. Mojo is something you can't bottle, but everybody knows what it means, don't they? And I like to think that I can give people that motivation back to find their mojo and feel confident and be genuine and authentic to promote themselves in a way that feels comfortable and not cringy, which in this world of social media that we live in can be incredibly challenging and really daunting for lots of people. So that's the kind of where I'm at. But I do also still teach dancing to adults for an incredible school in Woking, in the UK, which I love. It brings me so much joy. And I am an artist. I have a little hobby business on the side because that's my therapy, my art therapy, where I go and escape to go into my creative world, because obviously I'm a very creative person. And I'm a mummy and a wife and all the other stuff that goes with that. So that's who I am in a nutshell. I mean,
oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And you're right, Fran. We do wear so many hats, don't we? And different guises. And you've had a wonderful background experience in musical theatre where you received that training. And there must have been times in that where, there was the big highs where you had the shows, but also the big lows, I presume, where things didn't go according to plan, where maybe shows were cancelled and parts didn't come, or the rejections came in. I suppose that must have been really difficult for you, but in both sides of the coin.
Yeah, Seamus, theatre is a really unregulated industry still, in lots of ways. My nieces are still in the industry and I see it with them. I was lucky, I did work, but you are told when you train professionally that only 5% of you will ever work professionally in the industry. Oh. And I think the statistics are that only 1% of actors that train professionally ever make a living solely from the profession. So Wow. They've all got some other kind of side hustle. And I have friends, celebrity friends, who are still in the industry, working in television, working in theatre, and the majority of them all have something else going on, because especially when you get to that level, you aren't in a position to be able to go and get a job in a supermarket or go and get a job down the road in the local office, because everybody knows who you are, and then the press get hold of it. And so what do you do when you have that 6-month gap between jobs and you've got a family to support? Yes, they might get paid well when they're on a specific job, but you live your life according to the lifestyle that is presented to the world, right? For these celebrities.
Absolutely, yeah.
And actually that can be really tricky. And so I do know a very someone who I danced with growing up for years up north. And she, she's an incredibly successful actress, but she does have a side hustle on the side. Lots of people do. And it in that respect, it can be really difficult, because you're not, it feel that those moments of having to get another job feel like a failure, and it's not a failure. I know when I left college, I worked professionally in musical theatre for about 4.5 years. And I'm really proud of that. I did work. I worked not absolutely solidly. I had a few little breaks in between, and I did some funny jobs that weren't quite, which I'll talk to you about at some point. But and I did some really kind of great jobs touring in musical theatre. And you know, you have to earn your stripes, right? So everybody you have to start at the bottom and do those kind of jobs before you get the other stuff. So you build up your CV. But yeah, you're right. The highs are high, but the lows are low, you know, and still I know in the industry, the emphasis is not on supporting the actor. It's that if you don't want the job, someone else will take it. You know, there's always more people need the jobs, want the job than jobs are available. So it's a really, really fine balance for mental health, particularly in that sphere. You know, there was an instance once where I was up for a show in the West End. I was auditioning for Craig Revel Horwood of Strictly fame. I did 7 auditions for him. I got down to the last 2. It was between me and another girl. I obviously in that time in order to take those auditions, I had to take time off work to be able to go. I had to pay. I lived in North London at the time. I had to get into central London just off Oxford Street. So I was paying, but I think I worked out in the end, it had cost me about £180 in travel, lost wages, things like that to do those 6 auditions. And then I remember being at my other job, my agent ringing me and saying, they're going to offer you a swing, which is an understudy. And which for me at the time, at that point, I think I was 22, you know, they said, oh, we're going to offer you the swing. And I was like, he was like, you've basically got the job. I was like, oh my God, it's my first West End, you know, oh, it's so exciting, blah, blah, blah. And so he'd rung me, given me that. He said, I'm going to send you over the contract, just have a read through, blah, blah, blah. This is what they've offered. And then he rang me back 15 minutes later and went, oh, they've changed their mind. Because there's someone that was on maternity leave on another job and they've just realized they need to give it to her because she's got to come back from maternity leave. So I went from like 0 to 1,000 back to 0, like in the space of half an hour. And I will never forget that feeling of just absolute devastation. You know, it was, and I did go on and I got other jobs. I traveled around Europe with an amazing West End show. I did UK tours. I did all sorts of things, but I wanted that job. I really wanted it because it was West End, and there's so much emphasis put on West End being the be all and end all, and actually it isn't. Just to work is an achievement. No, it really is, because there's so many people out there, you know, that want the jobs. And I could go on about it. I could get on my soapbox about it for quite a long time. You know, and I, like I say, I watch my nieces go through it in the industry now, and my heart breaks. But they're both fairly successful, actually. Well, the eldest niece says they're 2 different. My eldest niece has done lots of West End. She's amazing. And so Lydia's brilliant too, but she's younger. So she hasn't had the opportunity yet. And she graduated just in COVID, so that was a real challenge for her. But she's played leads on cruise ships and all sorts of things. So she's you know, they're both really successful as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's in the family, it's in the blood.
It's incredible. It is incredible. You're absolutely right. It's a very thin line when it comes to mental health, particularly in that industry. And I know there's been a lot of controversy, particularly around, you know, Strictly and, you know, that whole performance genre where, you know, there was significant pressures on, you know, production teams and, you know, dancers to produce high quality work on a week to week basis. And obviously that must have its effect. And, you know, some of the stories that have been coming out, you know, have indicated that it may not be so glamorous.
You say that, Seamus. Sorry to cut in, but you know, these guys are professionally trained, right? These people. I'm not in no way advocating any kind of bullying or anything like that. Of course, that is not okay, and it should never have any place in any rehearsal room. But if, as a professionally trained dancer, which I am, somebody comes into a room and says to me, we're going to enter a competition and I want to win. As the professional, I would say to that person, okay, how much do you want to win?
Mm.
And they say, I want to go all the way. I want to win. Say, right, are you prepared to put the work in to make that happen? Yes or no? Yes. And I would explain, this will mean this, this, and this. We're going to have to put in the hours. It's going to be grueling. You're going to be learning from scratch. You know, as a professional dancer, it is tough.
Yeah.
Like training for years and years is tough. Never mind training for 12 weeks to win a competition.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm in no doubt that those conversations will have happened between that celebrity and that, you know, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And so there's a communication breakdown then if that person's struggling and they're not, you know, and I, like I say, I absolutely do not advocate bullying, but these people, these professional dancers have been working and training like they have for years and years and years, and they know what it takes because they've made it to the top.
Yeah.
So in their mind, they're going, right, this person has said they want to win. So they understand what that means.
Yeah.
Right? I would know what that means. But obviously to Joe Blogs on the street, they don't necessarily know what it means. That said, lots of those celebrities have been to theatre school and drama school. They know.
Yeah.
They know what they're letting themselves in for. And I would, well, that's a conversation for another time. But it's a tricky one for sure.
It is a tricky one. On a lighter subject, and you know this question is going to come up. Your best show.
Oh gosh, yeah. Do you know what? I didn't even think about it. You know, I think I wrote my dissertation on Bob Fosse. Now, Bob Fosse is an incredible choreographer, and I've always aspired. So I think it would have to be something like Chicago or Sweet Charity. I'm a bit of a purist, you know. I just like it when people randomly break into song, you know. So I like things like 42nd Street. Copacabana is absolutely up there for me. I love a bit of cheese and feathers and showgirls and all that. I was in Copacabana. I did the UK tour of Copacabana.
Fabulous. I have to share something with you, and
Go on.
you know, and I haven't really shared the story widely, but you know, I can tell you the moment where my voice broke in front of 300 people.
Go on.
Well, I was chosen for the part of Friedrich in The Sound of Music at my local school production.
Oh, it's cute.
And we practiced for over 6 months, and we had and it was on the whole week in terms of school. So we had both matinees and evening shows across the week. It was difficult. It was
8 shows a week. Yeah, 8 shows a week, baby. Yeah.
It was horrendous and exhausting, but exhilarating at the same time to get that rapturous applause at the end of, you know, curtain up, and it was just wonderful, and curtain down, and you know, to take all that. But on the final night, Fran, of the show, and I'd been struggling with my voice all week. You know, you'll be aware of The Sound of Music, and there's a point in that musical where the children say goodnight to their father. Yeah, still, yeah. So
yeah.
You know, my line was, "I leave and heave a sigh and say goodbye, goodbye."
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that point, my voice completely broke.
Oh, Seamus.
I went from a soprano to a baritone, much to the applause of 300 people in the audience who shared that experience with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. I mean, it happens. Go on.
It's a nugget, isn't it? It's a nugget. You know.
That's it. We used to do dance festivals, and we had 2 boys because the boys were rare, you know, the boys that dance, and none of that we were all sworn to secrecy, the girls, you know, the boys didn't tell school friends, because back then it wasn't cool to dance, you know. Now I do think it is a bit different now. I think the boys, I mean, there's still a bit of stigma attached to it, but people are much more accepting now of people playing, girls playing rugby, girls playing football, boys who dance, you know. It's a totally a much more inclusive society in that respect. But in the 90s, boys didn't dance, you know. They just, you know, it wasn't looked upon favorably by other boys, and so we were all sworn to secrecy. But this one particular thing, my lovely friend, he had a solo to sing, and his voice, breaking. Oh, and we were all just watching, and your heart absolutely broke for him. And yeah, that was the last time he did that one. He was replaced out and put in because he just went, I can't sing that anymore. My voice just doesn't do it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I had come down a couple of keys, for afterwards, but it's just one of those experiences,
But Seamus, to bring that back to resilience again, that he's probably never forgotten that experience in the same way that you've never forgotten that.
Never.
And he did go on to work in Hollyoaks, and he did go on to work in he trained professionally in the theatre and now lives in LA, and wow. He's successful jobbing actor, and you just think, wow, that obviously set him in good stead. I mean, it was horrible at the time, and I remember him being devastated. We were really good mates. We still are, but those kind of experiences, being on a stage, even in just like a school hall full of 300 parents watching the troupe section in dance festival, it's a humiliation that you have to either learn to laugh off or put to bed somewhere. You just, so that, again, those highs and lows, I think we were probably about 14 when that happened, 15. Young really to experience that kind of thing, don't you think?
It is, and that stays with us, and you're absolutely right, Fran, and we build that into our life, don't we? We build that into our joie de vivre, and we build that into our outlook, don't we? That we learn to, I suppose, in the words of Muhammad Ali came to me, dance like a butterfly and sting like a bee. But I'm not saying we fight everybody, but we take the knocks and we take the blows, and it's through those experiences that we, I think, build our resilience, and I suppose for you and the work that you do now, working with wonderful women who are themselves in that role of creating organizations and creating roles and having their own businesses, but lacking that, that mojo, as it were, to sustain that or to create that. How do you work with them, Fran? How do you work with them?
One of the things that I kind of have to champion is what we call imperfect action, because so many people are worried about things being perfect all the time, and I say, oh yeah, I'm gonna post on Facebook today. I'm like, okay, so how many posts are you gonna do? Oh, just one. And how long is that going to take you? Oh, it'll take me a couple of hours. A couple of hours to write one Facebook post. Okay. And why is it going to take you so long? Well, because it's got to be right, and I want to find the right picture, and I need to make sure that my wording's absolutely perfect. And I'm thinking, crikey, if we're asking someone to post regularly on multiple platforms, or even just on one platform, and you're taking 2 hours out of it every day to create one post to go on social media, that's not a good use of time. And so much of it, I have to, and because it takes so much time, they end up not doing it, because they're like, I just don't have time. It's just too much. Because it takes up so much brain space, and it's because they're really overthinking what they need to post about, who they're telling, and it's often because they're not clear on who they're speaking to directly, who their ideal client is. So part of the work that I do initially is about really breaking down who they're talking to. So looking at who their ideal client is, who they want to speak to, who do they want their marketing to reach, what problem do they solve? And then once we're really clear on that and genuine about it and honest, which, as you know, honesty is very important to me. And I think when we are honest, self-promotion becomes so much easier, because it's easy to be honest and tell people what we think and how we feel and how we can help them. if you're not totally sure, or you're not being completely honest, it doesn't come across in the same way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But taking that imperfect action, just doing something. So often it's just that the opposite of doing something is doing nothing.
Yeah.
And if you run your own business, doing nothing isn't really an option, right? Because you won't have a business anymore.
Yeah.
So the work that I do is really drilling down with people into that honest message that they want to get across about who they want to help and how they want to help them and what problem they can solve. And then encouraging and building confidence to help people to know that they just need to take action in small steps to get their message out there. And confidence is a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it gets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the more you use it, the easier it gets. And then the resilience builds. And then you're like, actually, I'm just going to post anything today. I'm just going to tell people I'm doing this. I mean, it's still got to be relevant to your business. You've still got to be targeting your messaging in the right way. But just taking some kind of action is often the first step, that imperfect action. Now, I'm not saying post something or have a conversation with someone that isn't relevant, but I'm saying keep it relevant, but just take small steps, you know, and those small steps all add up. It's like the 1% club, isn't it? I think it's Stephen Bartlett that talks about if we increase every area of our life by 1% in small incremental stages, then all those 1% add up eventually and make a huge change. So if you even only attack every small section by 1% or 2% improvement, eventually those improvements all add up and we create big change. Absolutely. But if we think about it in small increments, it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
No, I use the approach of tapas.
Yeah.
If you've ever been out for tapas, and I've been out for tapas a lot of times, and I love tapas, and every time when I go to a tapas restaurant, I always think to myself, I'm going to leave this restaurant and I'm still going to be hungry. And I'm always surprised how not hungry I am when I leave a tapas restaurant, because in essence, what you get in tapas is a series of small plates, right? With small portions on, and you get a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and you add it in and you mix it all up, and the conversation is flowing and the wine is flowing, and by the time you've finished your meal, you've probably ordered a couple of rounds of tapas, really, and you've refilled those plates a couple of times. In realization, you've had a fairly substantial meal, but you've not seen it. If they brought all that food out at once and just left it on a big, huge plate, you would go, oh my God, I'm never going to finish that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the same when you go to an a la carte restaurant, isn't it? I know my husband, you know, there's been times where we've been for like a fancy meal for an anniversary or something, and we go and we have a tasting menu, and and you get the massive plate with the tiny little bit of food in the middle. My husband is 6'3", he plays rugby, he's a big northern lad, he's hungry, and he's been presented with this little one scallop
right in the hole
on a something in the middle of a plate, and he's gone, well, that'll be gone in one mouthful. Well, like what is the point, and then by the time you get 12 courses down the line, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, can't eat anymore, don't bring pudding, it's the same concept, isn't it?
You're right. So it's the tapas approach for me, and you're absolutely right. I think you're right, and Stephen Bartlett is right, and I think if you break anything down to small little manageable portions, and it's the old adage, right? It's the old question, it's the eternal question: can a mouse eat an elephant? And people will reply either yes or no, but actually the mouse can, if it breaks the elephant down, once it's deceased, into small little manageable portions. It will eventually. It's going to take some time, but eventually the mouse will be able to eat the elephant.
I like the fact that you had to clarify that the elephant would have to be deceased for
yeah. I always kind of put that in there, just to say that, like, the elephant is not harmed in any way.
Sure. But equally, the mouse would probably struggle with a live elephant as
it would. It would. I never thought about it from the mouse's perspective, actually. I just thought, okay, the mouse is going to get a mouthful, right? So it's going to work.
Oh,
yeah. So it is. It is amazing. It's, and one of the things I love about your approach, Fran, I think, is the energy you bring. And how do you maintain your energy? I mean, you've already said you're a mum, you're a founder, you're currently holding down 4 jobs at the moment. You're doing this, you're going here, you're going there. And I suppose in business, as in life, right, we have many strings to our bow, and even as I'm a business, I'm also, a father, a husband, a grandfather, that with responsibilities, and at times, as you know yourself, sometimes we can just be, glorified Uber drivers, can't we? For our kids and our nieces and our nephews and our grandchildren. How do you maintain your energy level?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think I'm always tweaking the way I live, the way I operate. But to be honest, I have to look after my mind.
Mm,
That's what I have to do. And to do that, I'm a very spiritual person. I like to meditate. It really helps me. But actually, anything that grounds me out of those moments of high intensity. So I actually find dancing incredibly meditative, because in those moments, whether I'm teaching or dancing for myself, I have to focus. You have to connect mind, body, and breath. You have to concentrate on what you're doing, otherwise you're not doing the same thing as everybody else in the room. And I find that particularly keeps me on the straight and narrow. If I've had a bad day and I go and teach or take a dance class, I leave like a different woman, genuinely. And I think the dance keeps me sane, honestly. And making time for that is incredibly important to me. And taking the downtime, time for myself. And the other thing is just, I find the more organized I am and the busier I am, actually the better I cope.
Wow.
If I have too much spare time on my hands, that's when I fall into deep waters, because I've got too much time to think. If I'm busy and I'm planning and I'm organized and I've got my week planned out, I know everything's what I'm doing, I know where I have to be at any given time, I'm very, very organized. I have to be, to fit everything in. The moment that I fall off a cliff with that's when I get overwhelmed and I start to struggle. And I know that I have to rein something in at that point. So it's just checking in with yourself, isn't it? And making sure that you are controlling, not, and I don't mean that in like a control freak kind of way, but you are controlling what happens with your time and what you can fit in. And I say to my friends a lot of the time, I don't think I learned to say no until I was in my mid-30s. And what a revelation that became for me, is to say, actually, no, I don't want to do that, because I've always naturally been a little bit of a pleaser. I was born into the theatre, and therefore literally I stand on a stage and say, clap for me, tell me I'm wonderful. Naturally I'm a pleaser. I want to please people. I want them to I want to make people happy. That's always been and I guess it's part of the coaching too, right? Is that I want people to be uplifted and energized and fulfilled by the time that I spend together with them, and then send them off in a better place than they were than when they arrived. And it's the same with the dancing, it's the same with everything. When people come to the class, they've had a hard day at work, and I say, right, put your shoulders back, come on, stand up, we're gonna take a nice deep breath, and off we go. And they leave and they go, oh, I feel so much better for that. And when I used to make cakes professionally, that was another little sideline that I had when my children were little. I haven't told you about that, have I?
No.
I'm a professionally trained cake maker as well.
It is.
And I taught for years, and that actually, I did have a 10-year corporate career, which was connected to cake decorating as well. But when I used to first start making cakes, and obviously I made them from home, I ran my own business, And people used to come and pick up their cakes, and sometimes they would cry, right? They'd be like, oh, it's just so beautiful. My mum's going to be thrilled. And oh, you know, and I used to just, and it's the same feeling. People used to go, how do you go from standing on a stage and singing every night and, you know, to like making cakes? And I'm like, it's the same. You get the same thing. People come, they go, oh my goodness, you're so wonderful. You've done an incredible job. You know, it's blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, thank you very much. Yes. You know, it's the same feeling. Thank you. You're appreciating my creativity, and I've done this. I've made it with love, and I'm giving it to you. When I stand on a stage and I sing, I'm giving them my heart and soul on a plate, in my voice, in my soul. And that, you know, it's the same thing. When I paint a picture, I paint it with love. I struggle when I sell a painting if I don't know where it's gone. It's like, it's part of me. I've created that. It's a piece of my soul that I've given away to someone, that creativity. So, you know, it's all connected, that for me, that giving of energy, of heart, of love, of soul to people to help them feel better. And I can't actually remember what the original question was now. What was the original question?
The original question was, how do you keep your energy up?
Well, right, so that's now. It's by giving to other people. That's why I love it. It fills me with so much happiness and joy.
I absolutely love it, Fran, and I suppose to some extent, then you're living in your truth, right?
Oh, 100%. I see where you're going with this.
Do you see where I'm going with that? Do you see how I just
seamlessly?
I'm shameless. I'm a shameless, seamless interweaver of ideas and thoughts, right? And
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, thank you. You can have that one.
Thanks.
All right. And but is it then that we are required, we're responsible for seeking the truth in ourselves, and sometimes, right, that can be hugely difficult. And do we as human beings kind of run from that? Are we scared of that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I always know, and I'm sure you do too, just because of the type of person I am. And I know we've spoken about this before, where all my life I have been accused of being a show-off, or of being scary even, or sometimes stuck up, or sometimes what's the other one I've had? But you know, people, and it's not that. And I'm not that. I'm not scary. I'm squidgy and spiritual and kind and lovely
and loving and passionate and
my favorite thing, and how I came about to the coaching was because all my life I've been everybody's agony. And you know, my husband and I, we're both the people who, if people have a problem, they come to us, we pick them up, we sort them out, and we send them back on their way. And so when the coaching thing came about for me, it was an absolute no-brainer, because it's something I've done my entire life. I look after people. That's what I do. I'm incredibly maternal. So, but when I was younger, when people used to say this, oh yeah, you know, Fran, she's a bit scary, you know, thing. And it used to really hurt me. It used to really upset me. And I used to think, why do they think I'm scary? I'm not scary. But it wasn't me that they thought was scary. It was that they found my confidence intimidating. And that is a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I am a very outgoing, I can be quite loud. Oh, too loud. That's the other thing. Oh, she's very loud. No, I can be. Depends who I'm with. But you know, I am outgoing. I am outspoken. I'm a northerner. You get what, you know, that it is part and parcel, I think, in lots of instances. What you see is what you get with me. I say it as I see it. So if someone says something and I don't agree with them, I won't be aggressively argumentative, but I might challenge them and say, oh, it's interesting that you think that. Why do you think that? You know, oh, I think this. Oh, that's really interesting that we have that different, you know. And some people really just don't know what to do with that, you know. a funny story. Years ago, I was out with a group of friends, a friend who I've known for years and years, my lovely friend Mel. And she was like, oh, I've got a couple of new girlfriends. Why don't we all go out for a few drinks together? This is, I mean, I'm talking like 15 years ago. So I was a sprightly young thing at this point. And
You still are.
Stop it. And we went out. We were just sat in a pub in town, and it came to last orders. The bell went. I went, oh, quick, go up to the bar. I'm going. And she came back. She went, oh no, they've said they're not serving. And I went, huh, no way. They've only just rung the first bell. Hold that thought. So I went up to the bar and I was like, hey, did you just say it was last orders? What's the deal? And he was like, no. And I was like, come on, give us another drink. He was like, oh, all right then, fine, I will do. So I went back to the table, put the drinks down, and went, there you go. Don't know what the problem was. Went to the loo. When I came back and sat down, we carried on as normal. And when those two other friends left, my friend Mel said to me, she went, they were just so shocked by you. And I said, what do you mean? She said, when you went to the loo, they said, where did you find her? I was like, well, what do you mean? She went, well, they just didn't know what to do with you because you are just so you.
Oh man.
Time I was kind of like, oh well, I just am who I am, aren't I? And then you know what it's like after the fact. You process things, and I definitely overthink and overanalyze. It's a trait of mine. And I remember thinking, what do they mean? Where did she find me? What is that a bad thing? Was that a criticism? Was it a, and it really bothered me for years. I mean, I'm still talking about it. So it obviously still bothered me.
Yeah.
Because I was just being me. I'm quite outgoing, quite fun, and I wanted another drink. So I went and got one, like I didn't think anything of it. Convinced the barman to give us another round. It was fine. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, I didn't think. But to them, obviously, the fact that they'd been told no, and then I got up and challenged it, was like, where did you find this woman? Like, who is she? She's an alien from outer space? Like, she again, it's just that unshakable kind of confidence. And it has worked against me in the past, and I don't really know. I don't know how to be anything other than who I am. I am who I am. And I think, but learning to say no as I got older helped me to just be unapologetically who I want to be, and less people pleasing and more just being, who I am. But the truth is incredibly important. And I think my intuition's pretty good. And if I meet someone and I know that they're not being genuine, I've stopped using the authentic word. It makes me feel a bit sick. I think it's been a bit overused. It's a bit of a buzzword, but authenticity obviously is a big thing. But that genuineness, that honesty, I know straight away. I really do. If someone's not being truthful or honest about what they say, what they think, what they're feeling. And everyone's got their own stuff going on. It could be that they're protecting themselves in some way. It's not necessarily always coming from a bad place. That feeling of not being honest. I think, and sometimes I see it as a bit of a challenge personally. If I meet someone who's like that, I want to get underneath, and I'm gentle, but I will get there with people eventually. I do see it as a little bit of a challenge, especially when I'm teaching. If I get people that turn up to class that are very guarded, because you can imagine what I'm like when I'm teaching. I'm very, big and out there, and let's do it like this and do it like this, and I'm full of energy, and and I get everybody going, because that's what I have to do. It's my job. But occasionally we do get people that turn up that are very guarded, and usually there is a reason for that, but I get them going eventually, and we get and once, soon as they've been a few times, and that kind of, the walls drop, and then it's lovely to watch. It's a real privilege to work with adults in that way, especially in something like dance, you know.
It's fabulous. And resistance for you, both you and I, is futile because we do get through, Fran, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We do get through. You know, you've mentioned there how the truth is massively important, how honesty is massively important, and here's your seamless next link. To you're going to be taking that the next step further
I am. I
in terms of
genuinely
your
feel
own
like
work.
I'm. Yeah, sorry to talk over you. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a quest for the truth, and through
Right.
going through all of the coaching and talking to people about their journeys and their quest for the truth, I think it's made me question lots of things, you know. And so, thank you for the seamless link. I am. I've launched a podcast. I've just launched the intro for now, but it's called The Power of the Truth, and it's all about people's stories, not just of when they've told lies and told the truth. I mean, that would be really too easy, right? I'm
Yeah.
talking about people's life experiences, maybe where they've had to live a lie for another reason, or they've had a journey to the truth, you know, or times where they've had to tell little white lies in order to get through a particular situation, or whatever it looks like. I mean, it's such a huge subject, and I just really believe that your own truth is like your DNA. It's completely unique to you, and only you know your truth story. And actually, in that respect, everybody is interesting when it comes to the truth and what that means to them. But let me tell you, I've got some cool people that I'm going to
Really?
be talking to. Yeah, maybe you. But no, I've got. You are obviously going to come on my podcast, and for
Yes,
that,
I am.
I'm very grateful. Because you've got an incredible story to tell. But there are other people who I've got confirmed, which. Yeah, so I'm looking for people all the time. So you know, I'm on the lookout. So if anyone has anybody they'd like to recommend to me, and if your listeners have people, or if them themselves have incredible stories around the truth, I'd love to hear from them. Definitely.
Fantastic. Fran Willoughby, absolutely amazing. And we all look forward, and I'm looking forward to that podcast. I think it's going to be I think you've created quite a powerful podcast, if you don't
Yeah.
mind me saying so. And I'm, as one who has been there from the very beginning in terms
Literally,
of, yeah.
Inception.
Yeah, be careful how you use that word. You know, I'm so terribly proud of you, and I think it's going to be a wonderful podcast that will really shine a light on, you know, one's own truth, but how that one's truth can set us free ultimately, and
Definitely.
help us to live the life that we ultimately want and need, and is our true mission and our true purpose. And I know these words are bandied around, but for you and I who have been there, done that, and worn that T-shirt, you know, it makes sense, you
Yeah,
know, and the truth ultimately does set us free, right?
it does. And or you know, the other thing, and actually this is really relevant to one of my guests, little teaser, is because in her instance, without giving too much away, she's had to come to terms with the fact that she's never going to know the truth about this particular scenario. And it's taken her a lot of therapy and a lot of deep diving into her own soul to go, it's okay that I'm never going to know the truth about this thing, which has made a huge impact on my life. And I have to deal with that. I have to be at peace with it, you know? And so sometimes it's not just about the truth or the lie, but it's all the stuff in between as well. You know, sometimes it's okay not to know. Sometimes it's okay if you know a secret that you know is going to hurt somebody, don't tell them.
That's
You
it.
know, unless you feel like you have to, or they ask you specifically for the answer, then it's different, you know. But it's just all this, it's all the stuff. I mean, I here's something for you. And I mean, I'm not going to get my mum on the podcast, but years ago, my mum's 85 now, but years ago, it must be 20 years ago, we had a great Auntie Polly who was 90 at the time. I don't think her real name even was Polly. You know how they do that?
Yeah.
People have, I think her name was actually Mary, but anyway, everyone called her Auntie Polly. And she hit 90 and dementia struck, bless her heart. And sometimes she was really lucid and sometimes she was kind of off in another place. And this one particular time, my mum went to visit her and she produced a photograph of my mum's dad, so my granddad, and said, just to let you know, that's your dad's first wife, this photograph. And my mother was like, sorry? You know, bearing in mind my granddad died before I was born. And my mum took the photograph and was like, what do you mean this is Archie's first wife? Like, who is she? Oh yeah, it was all a big cover up and a big secret, and she no one ever did know what happened to her or something equal. And my mum was like, and then she kind of went back into kind of wherever she was, and we couldn't get any more information out of her about it. And there was only one other person in the family that was still alive that would have known enough or been alive long enough to know that if that was true or not. Auntie Ada. I think her name was Ada. And so then obviously my mum was like, what? My dad had a first wife? Like, what is all this? Now we knew, and this is where, like in the olden days, there was no social media, there was no emails, people passing information around. But it was this whole big secret, and then we realized that my grandma was actually 9 months pregnant when they got married, my grandma and granddad, and that there was also a rumor that my grandma had been sent off to have a baby earlier in her life. And then when my mum spoke to Auntie Ada was like, I don't think I'm supposed to, my mum was like, come on, if you know what this is, you need to tell me, because, And all she basically told her was that this factory owner that my grandma had a thing with and then been sent off to have a baby, but they couldn't have children of their own, this family, this factory owner. And then this other child had appeared. My grandma had come back and taken up with my granddad, who was our half first cousin, by the way. Scandalous. And then all my Auntie Ada would say to my mum, and you and her used to do amateur dramatics together, and everyone always used to say you look very alike, like that. And then she refused to say anything else. So we have no idea. My mum has no idea if my granddad had a first wife, first of all, if my grandma had another child that ended up living with this other man, who then was essentially potentially her half sister. But and there's no record of her birth. We've done our family tree back to the 1500s. And my mum, and I've sat down with my mum many times and just said, does it bother you that you don't know? There was obviously some kind of scandal. We've got letters that were written between my grandma and granddad that were kind of alluding to some kind of something, but obviously they never wrote it down in detail. So my mum, in that scenario, she's had to come to terms with the fact she's never going to know. Because then Auntie Ada passed away. Auntie Polly had lost her marbles. She passed away. And there was no one left alive to tell the truth anymore. And we've done so much research to try and find out, me and my sister and my dad, and we all got really into the family trees and all the rest of it, trying to find, and we even went to the births, marriages and deaths, the record centre, looked up all the marriage certificates, birth certificates, death certificates. We did everything to try and find. We've done DNA tests, where to try and connect with people and all sorts of stuff to try and figure it out on my mum's behalf. But we have had to kind of all come to terms with the fact we're never going to know. They were obviously disgraced in some way, the pair of them, But then there was always this idea in my mum's head, because my grandma was 9 months pregnant when they got married. Was she the product of that relationship, or was she the product of the other relationship?
Oh.
You know, and it's those kind of things. And you just think, my mum's never going to know if her dad was her dad, if there were other people, if that woman, Margaret, who was in the amateur dramatics, you know, was potentially her half sister. It was implied, but it was never said or proven or anything. And, you know, I think learning to live with that, or the fact that you're never going to know the answer to those questions, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's just not a teaser to that amazing podcast show, I'm tuning in. I am literally tuning in. I'm scrubbing my diary schedule when that podcast episode comes out, because honestly, it's going to be powerful, Fran Willoughby. And
well, that one I probably will never do as a podcast episode, because that's an exclusive for you, Seamus Corrie. There you go.
Thank you, Fran Willoughby. And I think I know it's been muted before, but I sense I have an instinct that on the back of this podcast episode and podcast series, I think there may be a book brewing.
Well, we'll see. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? I know. And I would certainly love to get my hands on that copy. I'm telling you that, because that's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Fran Willoughby, you have been an absolute star today. You have entertained. You have enlightened. You have given so many golden nuggets of wisdom to so many people this afternoon. It's been a pleasure to have you on my podcast episode. Where can people find you, Fran, if they want to know more, if they want to seek out and find you and look for that support service that you offer?
Okay, so my website is mojo-motivator.com. So that's the main place to go. My website is really pink. You can't miss it. It's really bright and out there. But obviously on Instagram, mojo_motivator, or Facebook, they can find me, again, Mojo Motivator. Or if they're interested in the podcast, then that is in all the places where you get your podcasts, the Power of the Truth podcast. So if they just search for that with Fran Willoughby, it will come up and they can listen to the intro. And if they subscribe, then they will get notified when the first episode drops, which I'm excited for. And it's on YouTube too. So
excellent.
If you want to see my face.
Excellent. And all those links that Fran has described will be available in the show notes following this episode. So please hit the links, follow Fran, connect with Fran, reach out to Fran. She's 1 in a million in terms of 1 in a billion, 1 in 7 billion in terms of amazing human beings, in terms of what you're doing, Fran. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on my podcast episode this afternoon. I wish you well, Fran, in terms of that series. And you know, in spirit and in mind, I will be with you. And physically, I think I will be with you in episode.
Yeah, I think you will. Yeah, no, I'm so grateful. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I you know, our chats I find incredibly inspiring, and our energy together is just a real joy. So thank you.
I await the day when we actually have a physical presence together, when we can actually sit down over a couple of glasses and just, you know, chew the fat, as they say in Glasgow, or put the world to rights. And I look forward to that day with.
Everyone will be like, "Has anyone seen Fran and Seamus? They've been gone 3 days."
Yeah, it's a summer.
Watches each other. So
it's a summer. It'll be a summer. Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of the night before we leave. It reminds me of the night I was at I was big into Irish traditional music when I grew up in Ireland. We had a wonderful, let's just say, a place of music very close to where we lived. And it just so happened that there was dancing and there was music that night. And then after the dancing and music finished, a few of the musicians decided to wait on afterwards. And as they say in Ireland, play a few tunes, share a few tunes and play a few tunes. And this was, maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning, they started playing. Anyhow, they continued to play for the next 2 days after. So what started out as just a session or a wee session turned into a festival of music. And,
wow.
And literally musicians came from all over Ireland, who popped in and popped out and played a bit and did a bit and had a bit of drink and had a bit of food and slept in the hall, and it was just incredible. Not that our conversation will be anything like that in person, but you know, let's just say we've got to pin those locations down when we have them, and I look forward to the day when I can actually meet you in person, Fran Willoughby.
Likewise.
And I think that day is not too far away. I don't think it is. Fran Willoughby, thank you ever so much. It's been a real pleasure. You bring some more light and energy and love to the world, and continue to do what you do and continue to spread your mojo out there, Fran.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Shane.